Welcome to A Fine Time, The Nanny Revisited. This is a podcast about The Nanny, where we recap each episode and then discuss, sharing our own unique take on each episode. I'm Bernadette.
And I'm Debbie. Today we're talking about episode 27, Curse of the Grandmas. As usual, we will start with a brief summary of the episode. Just shy of her 1-year anniversary as the Sheffield's nanny, Fran planned a field trip to Grandma Yetta's retirement home as the leader of Gracie's Red Robin troop, and planned for each of the youngsters to adopt their very own grandmother. The Red Robins are reminded to mind their manners, not make too much noise, and to definitely not unplug anything. Just as Fran is settling into her visit with Yetta, Gracie appears. Apparently, her assigned grandma checked out to buy a farm where she could go and kick the bucket. Gracie's enthusiasm for being a Red Robin has clearly evaporated. At this point, the mother of one of Gracie's contemporaries asks Fran if Niles would be interested in changing employers. Upon reporting this inquiry to Maxwell, Fran learns that Niles is always in demand, but no one calls asking after her, except, of course, her mother. To add insult to injury, instead of the anniversary party she assumed Maxwell was planning for her, she learns that Maxwell wanted her to babysit on her 1-year work anniversary because Maxwell and Cece have been nominated for a prestigious award. After that, Maxwell starts to get a little scared that Fran has barely said 2 words to him in 12 hours, and Fran gives Gracie Yetta as her adopted grandmother after a second granny died unexpectedly and Gracie identified herself as the common denominator. Yetta survives the experience but wishes she had it due to Gracie's poor storytelling skills. Back at home, Niles clarifies for Maxwell why Fran is upset, and at first Maxwell doesn't believe him. There's no time to order flowers because Cece and Maxwell are off to DC, so he does something even better. He recognizes Miss Fine's anniversary on television during his acceptance speech, causing Cece to faint. Flattered at the recognition, Fran asks Maxwell why she doesn't have other job offers, and after a lot of hemming and hawing on his part, he points to her beauty and explains that no woman would want someone so attractive in her household just under her husband's nose. Do you think I missed anything, Bernadette?
No, that was a very thorough summary.
Thank you. I'm not going to lie. I had a little bit of trouble trying to piece it all together, and I'm not sure it flowed as well as it could. But, as we will talk about scene by scene, the storylines go back and forth. So
Yes, they do.
they're very interwoven.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, would you like to start us with scene 1?
Yes. So we begin in the living room, and Gracie's coming down the stairs. She is wearing a uniform, and we learn that she is a Red Robin. Now, Gracie, though, doesn't look too pleased. Niles inquires as to why, and she, points to the uniform and says, she looks like a dork. Niles, trying to cheer her up, I suppose, says, well, I wear a uniform. Do I look like a dork? And Gracie kind of makes a facial expression that would indicate that she does think he looks like a dork. And so he warns, remember what happened to Gretel.
Mm-hmm.
So then Fran appears coming down the stairs wearing her own modified Red Robin uniform. As you can imagine, it's a more form-fitting version.
That's a way to
Uh,
put it, yes.
yes. And Niles, I believe, comments on it, and Fran notes, well, she can sell more cookies that way.
Yes. Do you think it's worth commenting on what the uniforms look like here?
Sure. Yeah. Do you want to describe them, Debbie?
Sure, but please jump in. Let's start with Gracie. Well, I guess
Mhm.
overall, the color scheme is sort of tan and red, right?
Yes.
There's a
Yeah.
red hat slash beret, depending on who's wearing it. And there's a red scarf that goes around the neck. For Gracie, it's all the same color tan, short sleeve shirt with a collar with the scarf under the collar, sort of like a tie. And then
Mhm.
the skirt is sort of pleated, but not fully pleated, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Um, and they're, I think, red gloves for Gracie as well as Fran. So Fran, on the other hand, hers is like a blazer, a tan blazer that's sort of low cut with, again, a red scarf around her neck, not exactly in the same way that Grace's is. Um, and then her skirt is a slightly different color tan, which, as you put it, is more form fitting. Fran's also wearing red high heels and red gloves. and she's
Yeah, it's
wearing the
almost
hat.
like a pencil skirt, kind of, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's also some red, I guess, embroidery on the top part of the outfit, and where Grace is wearing the hat sort of behind her head with her hair tucked into it, so you can't see anything. You can see the hair right on her head, but like you can't see the hair that would hang behind her head, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Fran, meanwhile, has her hair down and she's wearing her red hat as if it was a beret, sort of off to the side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So again, very different feels.
yes, yes.
um,
Anyway, continue. Sorry.
no, it's okay. Yeah. So then Fran and Niall start having a conversation, because Fran is very happy it's the 1 year since Danny dumped her.
Yep.
Well, why would that be something to be happy about? So she explains, well, then that means that it's, a year from tomorrow when Heather discovered Nair in her shampoo. Assuming
Part
is
plus. I don't know what that is, but yeah.
I'm assuming some type of hair product.
Yes, it
Uh,
is shampoo or shampoo and conditioner.
yeah,
Yes.
and then that means then it's gonna be uh, a year ago Friday that Heather made her first trip to get the bald cap, wig, whatever. And Niles is still like, okay. And then she's like, and that means that Saturday is a year from when, she started her job. Um, and
Yes.
so, you know, she's very exciting about her upcoming 1 year anniversary there. And, Niles, they start to reminisce and, oh, yes, that time that you called the Orkin man when I served escargot. And
Yep.
well, no food should, leave a trail behind,
Trail of
something along.
slime behind. Yeah.
She doesn't care how rich you are. Um, well, anyway, at this point, they're all kind of standing around where the couches are in the living room.
Mhm.
And Maxwell comes in from the back and he notes, oh, why don't you look adorable? And of course, Fran immediately takes that as him complimenting her. And he's like, no, I was talking about Grace. Um, and again, though, he's like, I missed, I think I have something missing,
So he
but
he looks at her because, like,
yeah,
again, you pointed out that she thought he was complimenting her,
yeah.
and he was really talking to Grace, and then he looks at her and says, "Well, I know red robins are always prepared, but for what?"
Oh, oh yeah. Earn
Is
a
that where you're
merit
going?
yeah. Yep, that's it. And she's like, earn a merit badge to find out.
Yep,
There's a bit of some flirtation there. Um, but
absolutely.
Maxwell says, oh, how nice it is for her to volunteer to be Grace's essentially like den mother, or like the Red Robin mother for Gracie.
Yep.
And Fran kind of turns to Niles like, oh, that's the last time I'll scratch my armpit in public.
Yes.
But then Maxwell asks Fran if she's free on Saturday, and Fran immediately perks up, and
Mhm.
she can't believe he remembered. All that kind of, like, because she's thinking that he's gonna celebrate her 1 year anniversary, and she does this thing throughout this episode where she kind of like puts in like some drops some information, size 5, Bloomingdale's 3rd floor, diamonds are forever, kind of thing to the other.
Right.
um yeah,
Yeah.
so again, knowing this is a sitcom, you know immediately that this is not going to be the case, right?
I'm
Like,
glad you are that discerning in your consumption of television.
oh yeah, like immediately you're like, yeah, that's not happening, because Maxwell won't tell her exactly what's happening on Saturday.
Right. He says
So
he'd prefer not to discuss it.
exactly. And so
Wait,
of course Fran makes that jump to, oh, it must be, some type of party or something
a
for me.
surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Was there anything else you wanted to add to that opening scene, Debbie?
The one line I want to add is, you're right, Maxwell asks her if she's free Saturday night, and she says, Saturday, why? And he says, oh, I'd rather not discuss that, or I'd rather not say, something like that. And her response at the end of that conversation is, I'm all yours, and I have been for a year.
Yep.
Yep. So like
goes right over his head.
Right. But as you point out, she's
Yeah.
trying to slip information in throughout. And this is, I think, one of the most brazen ways she does it.
Yeah. Like literally announcing a year.
Exactly.
As if, that would trigger anniversary. But Maxwell does not get it. Message is not received.
Yeah. Which is sort of unfortunate. Although if it didn't happen, we would not have this episode. So
yes,
sort of a mixed
at least
bag.
part of the episode. Yeah.
Correct. So shall I take us to the Assembly of Red Robins?
Yes.
So we're still in the living room in scene 2, and Fran is sitting in front of a fairly large group of girls who look like they're about Grace's age, right?
Yeah.
And so she's starting to tell them about survival tips. And so she explains that a proper knot can save your life. And, she tells them that at one point in this discussion to listen closely, and they all make a show of leaning forward to listen to her. So she gives this example. You're in the woods. You look around. All of a sudden, you squish a bug right here, and she hits her chest, like, right in the center of her chest. And she explains that a proper slip knot not only can conceal those unwanted bug guts, but it also creates a flattering neckline and gives the illusion of cleavage. And the kids are, impressed by this. And I sort of thought parts of this scene were kind of awkward, because the kids are all there, but she sort of like gets up and walks away from them because she sees Brighton and Maggie are heading out. She wants to know where they're going. And so Brighton can't not answer the question. And he says they're going to Macy's to buy a gift for someone. Maggie cuts him off because she doesn't want to tell Brighton to tell her that they're clearly going to get her something. And so they're going to get Maggie's friend Mark something, and Fran asks, what are you getting him? Oh, Chanel number 5. Brighton volunteers very quickly. And Fran's like, well, maybe Mark would like something a little more floral. And I'm not going to lie, I did not catch the names of the perfumes she dropped. If you got them.
I didn't catch it either, because sometimes when she does her little like slipping information, like it's hard to catch everything, I feel like.
Yeah, so I think she said Gina Tay and Langitante, but
yeah, some type of lighter floral scent.
Right. I have no idea if those are actual names of perfumes, but that's what it sounded like phonetically. Anyway, so then she tells the kids to take their father's credit card, which is interesting. So they leave, and she goes back to the assembled kids, the assembled Red Robins, and she explains that for today's field trip, we're going to go to my grandmother's retirement home, and you're each going to adopt your very own grandma. And as she's telling this, she's handing out, she has a tissue box, and she's having the kids each take a tissue. And she's asked, well, what's the tissue for? And Fran says, give that to your grandma. It makes a lovely wrist and brassiere strap ornament, which I thought was such an interesting thing to say.
Yeah, and it's like a pink tissue.
Yes.
Like a light pink tissue.
Yes, we will come back to that later. Because I thought that was a very interesting thing, because I cannot recall the last time I saw a pink tissue or pink tissue box. But so as, the kids are sort of getting ready, Fran's explaining the trip, Cece comes in, and Cece basically poo-poos the whole trip. Like, you're not going to make these basically decrepit old women feel any better by bringing these youthful girls in. And Fran says, well, how would you feel if you were alone and forgotten without any friends? Oh, bad example. And Cece sort of just kind of glazes over that and explains that, well, I know when I'm old, I'd rather be in a dark room with the drapes drawn, the mirrors covered, and a really big bottle of NyQuil. And Fran, of course, is the total opposite. She's like, not me. I'm going to be a platinum blonde prune down in Miami, just pulling up my tube top and cha-cha-chaing with the Cabana Boys. And Cece just kind of looks at her and says, well, I'd rather die young. And Niles can't help himself, but he chimes in, and we're all pulling for you. Is there anything you want to add to that scene?
Yeah, just at the look a couple things just at the very end too. I think it's funny when Fran notes to Niles that, not the fines, we don't go early. We'd rather linger and be a burden on others.
Good point.
Yeah. And then earlier in this scene too, Niles does make a comment to after that whole proper slip knot demonstration. I believe it's Niles makes a comment to Fran that she's a natural born leader or born leader or something along those
Yes.
lines. He mentions that she was the leader of her Weight Watchers program or group. And he seems kind of surprised, like, oh, you had a weight problem. And she says, like, she woke up with a Milky Way and didn't realize how it got there or something like that.
Yeah, it was in
And the
her
reason I
mouth.
bring that up is just that you've mentioned in previous episodes, like all these allusions and stuff to like Fran and food, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I mean,
so yeah.
that's something that we're going to constantly see, you know,
Mm-hmm.
when someone's had a bad day, they're going to reach for I think we've actually seen this, the food comment, the food thing, at least, in the episode, a plot for Nanny, you know, Fran and Maggie are both having man troubles, and Fran was going to go for the ice cream, and Maggie's already eating it. So she's like, oh, I guess I'll have some leftover birthday cake.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
people are putting food over their feelings.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
Yep.
would you like to
Uh,
take us to the retirement home?
yes. So we're at Grandma Yetta's retirement home. And, Fran is passing out, every little girl has a cupcake and a tissue.
Mm-hmm.
And, Fran, sends them on their way to go find their respective grandmothers. Meanwhile, Fran goes over to Grandma Yetta. Grandma Yetta, it turns out, has not requested to be a part of this kind of a little program. But at first, when Fran gets to her, it seems like Grandma Yetta does not recognize her. She thinks she's a very big girl or
Wow,
something like
you're a big Robin. What, were you left back?
Yeah. And then I didn't catch the names. I don't know if those were like actual references, Debbie, or if it was just like names of their family members.
I'm not gonna lie, I listened to it multiple times and I could not get the names.
Okay.
I thought
Because,
they must be a television reference.
yeah. Well, because Fran then in response says, well, if you're going to live in the past, like, why don't you live in the Renaissance or something like that?
Right, pick the
Um,
Renaissance.
but so yeah, Renaissance. So like Fran sits down, to chat with her and she asks Grandma Yetta why she didn't, participate, join the program. And Grandma Yetta says, I'm not a joiner.
Correct.
Um, and then there's they're kind of like in their recreational room at the retirement home, I would say, like the living room, rec room, whatever. So
Yeah,
there's a TV there, and there are some of the other senior citizens sitting around watching it. And Grandma Yetta's like, oh, look at them watching Jeopardy, as if they know what European monarch it is for 500. They can't even remember their room number.
correct.
Um, but anyway, Gracie then comes back to them. And well, she couldn't find her grandma. The grandma had checked out, um, bought a farm.
Yeah, so there's this
A-
really
and
great
yeah,
back and forth that she wasn't
yeah,
in her room. They said she checked out. Well, maybe she moved to Florida. No, they said she bought a farm. And the way Gracie delivers that line is just so cute.
yeah,
And
very innocent. And then
exactly,
Grandma Yetta though is kind of like, what? She couldn't even grow a wart.
exactly,
And then Fran has to kind of turn to Yetta and go, maybe she went to the well to kick the bucket.
exactly.
And Grandma Yetta's like, "Oh, paint me a picture," or something like
You
that.
don't have to paint me a picture.
Yeah, yeah. So, so basically, then Fran turns to Gracie and explains that actually, she passed away, and Gracie says, "Oh, can I eat the cupcake?" And and Fran's like, "Oh, children are so resilient."
Correct.
Um, and then though Grandma Yetta, I guess, realizes something about like that person's room has like cross ventilation or something. So
She had
Grandma
a
Yetta
corner.
again, huh? Oh,
She had a corner
so
room.
cross. cross ventilation. So she shakes Gracie. Has anybody moved in yet? As if Gracie would know.
Correct.
But this is again kind of a recurrent thing with using Gracie for like some physical comedy.
Hmm.
Poor Gracie often gets shaken, I feel like, by people, picked up, shaken. Um,
Yeah. Um, I don't know if I've mentioned this on the podcast or not, but I did see there was one article that referenced an interview that the actress, I think Madeline Zima, I think is how her last name's pronounced, um, made a comment about how she felt like sometimes she was used as a prop
yeah.
on the show. Um,
Hmm.
which, I mean, you're right. She is often used for physical comedy, but it's probably because she's the smallest and most easily lifted.
Hmm. Yeah. And again, Grandma Yetta does not lift her up. She just kind of like shakes her by her arms.
Right.
But yeah, is there anything you wanted to add to that scene, Debbie?
The one thing I'll add is that at the very beginning, Fran tells the kids, remember your manners, no loud noises, and whatever you do, don't unplug anything,
Yeah.
which seems
Yeah.
like pretty good advice to the kids.
Yes, indeed.
So then I guess we're back in the Sheffield home,
Mm-hmm.
and the kids are leaving, the Red Robins are leaving, and Fran says goodbye to them. Bye, my beautiful Red Robins. Fly, fly, fly the hell out of here. You know,
After she closes the door, yeah.
yeah, she's clearly had enough of them. And Gracie's sitting on the chair in the living room, and Fran goes over to her, and Niles is there, and he says, I'm guessing the field trip was less than a total success considering there was a body count. And
Mm,
yeah, I think that's an accurate way to put it. Um, and Gracie sort of says, I don't really want to be a Red Robin anymore. And Fran tries to dissuade her from dropping it. Oh, come on, honey. One old lady dies on you and you're already turned off to the whole Red Robin experience. And before Gracie can really say anything, the doorbell rings. And Fran, of
mm-hmm.
course, shouts that she'll get it, which is important because usually Niles is the one getting the door. But Fran gets the door and it's Mrs. Livingston, Heather's mother. And so Fran needs to clarify which Heather in the group it is. And it's the Heather, it's not Heather with the freckles, it's Heather with the extra pinky. And Fran comments, it's a real treat watching her sip tea. But so Mrs. Livingston kind of makes a sort of starts having this conversation with Fran. Like, I know this is a little awkward, but we're, making a change in our domestic staff. And the kids always say such great things about the Sheffield home. And Fran, immediately thinks it's because of her. She says, in the short year I've been here, I have added a certain element of style and panache to this house. And then immediately kind of canceling that, she's like picking at her teeth. When did I eat corn? That's one of those lines that I think has been used in advertisement for the show in syndication. So
Oh.
I wanted to mention that. But so Fran says to Mrs. Livingston, even if you doubled my salary and offered me an El Dorado in the Bill Blast color scheme, I'd have to turn you down. Wait, who'd pay the insurance? And Mrs. Livingston's like, Niles, like, we're interested in, like, she has to cut Fran off and be like, no, we're actually interested in Niles. Oh. And Fran's like, what is it, that fancy English accent? If I wanted to, I could talk with an accent too. And her, like, Queen's accent gets thicker as she says that. But
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Livingston basically just asks Fran to, see if Niles is happy, and let them know. And yeah, it's kind of awkward.
Yep.
Is there anything you want to
Yeah.
add?
No. We next cut to the hallway for a very quick scene. It's Fran's on her way to Maxwell's office, but first we see Maggie and Brighton kind of talking about before Fran gets there. It's Maggie and Brighton in the hallway, kind of talking about what to get Fran. And they're like, "What about a sweater?" Something about cheap and incredibly tacky. Well, we want to get her something she doesn't have, or something like that. I couldn't quite get it. But Fran, walks through and they're like, "Oh, well, Fran, like we were just wondering if uh and she Fran kind of steps in Mark. Oh yeah, if Mark would like some what Mark would like maybe some earrings." And Fran says, "Oh, I'm sure Mark would love earrings, but it'd have to be clip on." And they go, "Oh, it is Mark's ears not pierced? And they're like noticeably like looking at Fran's ears. And Fran says, oh, no, Mark's ear, ears are, earlobes are too fatty or something like that, and walks away. But it's like so evident what's going on,
Right.
obviously. So, so yeah, that's just a very quick kind of scene there.
Would you like to talk to us about The Office as well?
Sure.
Because it was such a short
So,
scene.
yeah, so Fran goes into the office. Maxwell and Niles are at the desk. Cece's kind of further back in the office in a different spot. Fran wants to talk to Maxwell, but he says, they're busy right now making arrangements or something along those lines. So she's like, oh, shrimp cocktail, like again with her like kind of dropping what
Mm-hmm.
she wants. Um, and that Maxwell's kind of getting impatient. It's like, is there anything, can you tell me anything even remotely comprehensible
Yes.
right now? And she's like, well, I would rather tell you, you know, without, and she starts kind of gesturing towards where Niles is, but Maxwell says lamp because the lamp is, I guess, closer. um, and then Fran change, like they changed positions, so it's clear that it's Niles. And Maxwell's like, oh, you can say anything in front of him. There's no secrets here. And, Cece points out that's because Niles listens at the door.
Mm-hmm.
Niles shoots back. Well, otherwise I couldn't hear you scratching to get back in. Like good thing I do. Otherwise couldn't hear you scratching to get
Exactly.
back. So, Fran kind of starts out, okay, fine, and she vaguely states that someone had inquired about at most valued domestic employee. And Maxwell immediately says, "Oh, Niles," and, you know, um, and he explains to Fran, well, due to Niles' skills and breeding, he's in high demand. We're off, he's people are often calling for him, and Niles just kind of says, in his just as a statement of fact, I'm hot.
Exactly.
Um, and then Fran asks, oh, well, what about me? And Niles and Maxwell just start laughing. Um, so, of course, Fran's like, what? And it turns out no one ever calls for her.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and, Fran's just kind of like, what? And Cece, though, then steps in and says, I don't want to be rude. And Niles says, since when? And Cece says, you're right. Get out to Fran. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and and then again, it turns out that Cece is the one who is making all the arrangements and stuff for Saturday. And Fran takes this to mean that Cece is making arrangements for whatever surprise Maxwell has for Fran and, you know, for the anniversary. So Fran
Correct.
like, oh wow, I didn't know that this side of you. Um, they say people you hate on sight are the ones that become your best friends or something. And Niles just kind of says in passing again, not always.
Right. Yeah, Fran says, boy, did I have you pegged all wrong. Isn't it
Hmm.
always the people you hate on sight that become your lifelong friends?
Hmm. Yeah. But then it turns out that no, actually, they're going to Washington because the Center for Performance Arts has um, nominated Maxwell and Cece. Um, and Fran is very confused. Like, you know, so what do you want me for Saturday night for to watch the kid, babysit the kids? And Cece kind of quips, no, to fly the jet,
Right.
obviously, But so Fran um, doesn't explain at all why she's upset or what she was thinking. She kind of makes a note about the overlooked employee or something like that. And Maxwell's kind of like, oh, did you have plans for Saturday or something? And she mentioned something about eating lean cuisine and
Yeah, she was going to heat
I
up
didn't
a
catch
lean
the rest of
cuisine. The
it.
heat up a lean cuisine and see what kind of frontier mishigas Dr. Quinn has gotten herself into.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So,
So again, we end the scene with Fran just feeling very bad. First of all, because no one ever inquires after her. And second of all, because it's obvious that Maxwell is not actually um, doing anything for the anniversary.
right.
Is there anything else you want to add to that?
Just a couple things. The first is that, Fran, as you pointed out, Fran says, "Doesn't anyone ever call for me?" And Niles chimes in, "Yeah, your mother.
Mm-hmm.
Clairol's love and care gives better coverage," is what the message was. And Fran's like,
Ah,
"What? Why? I don't know why she's telling me that." And you can see she's like pulling one of her hairs out.
mm-hmm.
Um, so people do call for her. It's just not what she was inquiring about.
Yeah.
Um, and the other thing I'll mention is that you're right. Fran comments about how she's overlooked. She's an overlooked employee, but that's in response to Maxwell explaining, well, we might as well tell you. We've been nominated for this award, this very prestigious award, and we've been overlooked so many times before. Like he
Ah,
didn't want to. It was bad luck. That's why he didn't want to mention it. They've been overlooked. And he's like, and she says, "Well, you've been overlooked."
mm-hmm.
Kind of, yeah, as you put it, she's disappointed and sad.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Um, that's all I wanted to add to that scene.
Okay. Do you want to take us to the living room?
Sure. So we're now in the living room, and it's Fran and Gracie sitting on the couch, and Fran's helping Gracie with her hair, and she's explaining that you're gonna love your new grandma, Mrs. Klein. Um, and she explains how she's been, vetted for Gracie, right? Oh, actually, I take that back. That's in the next scene. But you're gonna love your new grandma, Mrs. Klein. Do you remember what I told you to ask her? And Gracie chimes in, "Is she related to Calvin? And can we get a discount?"
Mm-hmm.
Um, so then Maxwell comes in and says something along the lines, "How are you two ladies today?" And Gracie's like, "I'm fine, Daddy." And Fran is doing this thing where she's answering but mumbling, so it's kind of hard to hear her. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and she does this throughout the scene when talking to Maxwell. So he asks, "How are you?" She says, "I've been better."
Mm-hmm.
He asks, "Is everything all right, Miss Fine?" And she mumbles, "Oh, no." Um, and then, "Is something bothering you?" And she mumbles an answer, which I'm not gonna lie, was totally incomprehensible to me. And then he says, "What?" And she says, "Oh, nothing." That part was like normal volume. And so Maxwell says, "You've barely spoken a word to me in 12 hours. It's beginning to scare me." And she's like, "I have no idea what you're talking about. I invited my mother and I'll never hear the end of it." And then he's like, "No, you're not leaving this house until you explain to me what I've done that's upset you." And she because she and Grace are now like walking towards the door, trying to leave. "I'm not upset with you. You're the best boss anyone could possibly ask for." And then in her snide undertone, "Eat trafe and die."
Mm-hmm.
And then
I
they leave.
think, yeah, I think earlier what I caught, and again, it might not be totally accurate, was poor and a laughing stock
Say that
that she
again?
mumbled. Poor and a laughing stock.
Okay, see
That's what I heard.
that's definitely why I was like, it's totally incomprehensible to me because that
I
doesn't.
don't know if that's accurate. That's what I had written down.
Hey,
So
at least you
it
got
could,
words.
so it could be something totally else. But yeah,
Please, if you guys are able to understand it, please email or tweet at us and let us know what we could not understand.
yes, yes, indeed. Um, but yeah, yeah, but yeah, throughout the entire scene, she's doing that kind of passive aggressive mumble.
Yeah, that's a really good way to describe it because
I mean, because it's clear that she is not happy with him.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So we are now back at the retirement home. Gracie's supposed to be meeting with Mrs. Klein. Um, and this is one of those things where, y- you know, there's a
there's a
story being told by what's going on in the background, right?
correct.
So Fran is like, oh, you can go find Mrs. Klein, um, she's cute, and
Cute, sweet, and healthy as a
y-
horse.
yep. and healthy as a horse. Surely she hasn't, she'll be fine. Well, in the background, we see
You
someone roll
one
out.
sorry. You missed
Yeah.
that Fran adds she holds the retirement home's record
No.
for
That's in a second. Yeah,
okay, sorry.
it's separate. So you see first that someone's been rolled out on a gurney, like obviously deceased, right? When she's
Sheet over
talking,
them. Yes.
yeah, sheet over. So it's clear this is a deceased person. And this is when, she is talking about how cute, sweet, and healthy as a horse she is. And then Fran adds she also has the record in the retirement home on the thigh burner, and that's when the person also then puts out a burner on top of the person, deceased person,
Correct.
to indicate that yes, this is indeed Mrs. Klein.
Yes.
But
Did
of
you
course, Fran
catch?
and Gracie have not taken note of this or anything like
Mm-mm.
that. Grandma Yetta comes in. Fran explains why they're there, and Gracie's going to find Mrs. Klein, and Grandma Yetta with basically is like, well, the only way to contact her is through a Ouija board.
Correct.
And she really shouldn't have gone for that second rep because the record is one rep,
Correct.
and if she had not gone, she shouldn't have gone for that second rep. And then Gracie is like, what? Is it me? Like, am I a jinx? And, Fran tries to comfort her, brings her onto her lap. But she does that kind of like spitting thing.
Yeah.
I don't
Poo
know
poo
how to
poo.
describe. Yeah. As if like warding off something, right?
Yes, but we'll talk about that in our Yiddish
Yeah,
Cop
yes.
segment.
Um, uh, but Fran's trying to reassure Gracie she's not a jinx. Anybody would, be so happy to, have her. Would you go cheer anyone else up? But anyway, everybody, as soon as they hear that Gracie's kind of looking for someone else, like literally run away. The
Correct.
entire room. And it's like fairly full of people, like retirees there. Everybody makes a run for it. And and Grandma Yetta even starts to kind of turn and stuff. But Fran's like, you know what? Just to prove it to you, I'm going to give you my very own grandma. And they catch, Grandma Yetta has not made her full escape because, how sticky the floors are.
Yep.
And she's finally kind of like, okay, yeah, I've lived a good life.
Yeah.
she'll be Gracie's grandmother there.
Honey, I'd love to be your grandma. I've lived a good life.
Yeah. Yep. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, the one thing right before Yetta says to Fran, would you go cheer somebody else up? Fran was trying to make Gracie feel better by saying, the people here are old and sick. They can go at any time, in the next minute even.
Yep.
Like, definitely not what you should be saying in a retirement home.
Yep. Yeah. You're right. Yeah, that was directed toward Fran. But again, as soon as there's any indication that Gracie would go to anybody else, it clears out. Poor Gracie.
Really fast, as you point out. That's all. I have nothing else to say. Should I pick up in the next scene, which is still in the retirement home?
Yes.
Okay. So we see Gracie and Yetta are sitting together, and Gracie's clearly telling one of those children's stories that have no ending. So Gracie says, so she said that Heather was a liar. So then Heather said, no, wait. Oh, yeah. No, wait. Oh, yeah. Let's start again. And Yetta says, see, honey, you're not a jinx because I'm not dead. And she turns to Fran and adds, and I wish I was. So Fran suggests to Gracie, why don't you play hide and seek? And Gracie's like, okay, I'll hide. Good choice, honey. And so Gracie disappears to go hide. And Yetta turns to Fran and says, so what's the matter? How do you know something's the matter? Franny, I know you like the back of my hand. And she looks at her hand. Geez, I've never noticed that before. And then she sits back down and says, what is it, man trouble? And Fran's like, how could he not know what's bothering me? I guess I'm like all the fine women. We're just too damn subtle, which
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure most people would call the fine women subtle.
No.
And so Yetta tries to make her feel better, and she says, it's a waste of time talking to men. First of all, they're not that interesting. For 62 years, I was married to your grandfather. He didn't say 2 words. The man had no communication skills. And Fran adds, that's true. If only he'd been able to say, I'm choking on a chicken bone, he'd be alive today. So Yetta continues, so what is it? Your sex life stinks? And Fran's like, he doesn't sleep with me. Not even on your birthday? Asks Yetta. No. And Yetta says what she's clearly thinking. That's a bad marriage. And Fran's like, yet again, we're not married. Oi, look at me. I'm hanging on every word like I'm talking to Yoda.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you want to add to that scene?
No. I
Okay.
think you got it all.
Would you like to take us to the living room then?
Yes, so we're back in the Sheffield home in the living room. Towards the back, Cece is looking into the mirror. She has presumably what she's wearing, which is like a red halter dress, floor length, but
Oh,
she has it not on. She has it on the hanger, and the hanger's like over her head.
right.
Yeah, and she's standing in front of the mirror pretending to accept an award because she has a vase like in her hand or something like that, or a
Right.
statue or something. So she's pretending to accept an award. Meanwhile, um, Maxwell is trying to count back 28 days since the last day that Fran was upset with him for no reason. It turns out that it's going to be next week, and Niles, intones something to look forward to. Um, and you know, then Maxwell's like, "Oh, maybe I should ask Cece because she's a woman," and and Niles is like, "I'm still waiting on the DNA results for that." Because again, like Maxwell's like, "I don't understand women," and then Cece comes up, and I I will need you to fill in some of the gaps.
Yeah, I have it. So I'm
Okay.
ready.
If you want to say it, basically Cece says, "Oh, it's not you, it's her life she's mad about," and then Debbie, you want to say
Sure.
specifically?
You men just don't get it. She doesn't hate you, it's her life. She doesn't have a boyfriend and she has a dead end job with no prospects. She's working for a man who doesn't even know she exists. Her own dog hates her. A blind man stole her stereo. Who was I talking about again?
Mm-hmm. A blind date. Yeah, blind date stole her stereo. Who was I talking? It's clearly herself.
Right. And
Uh,
especially that plus her own dog hates her, which we know Chester hates Cece
yep.
but loves Fran.
Yes. So, Niall steps in at this point, and he's like, "Oh, it's who, it's spiked heel dug into the parquet a year ago,
Something like,
parquet floor,
yeah,
yeah,
think
something like
back,
that."
sir. 1 year ago today, someone's spike heel dug its first divot into the parquet floor. And what was
And
Maxwell's response?
he's like, "Oh, haven't we got that fixed yet?" Or something along the lines of like fixing it. He doesn't understand
Right.
where this is going. And then Niles tries again. He's like, "It's been a year since we learned if it ain't half off, it ain't on sale." And still, Maxwell does not understand. And he's like,
No.
"Can't you just say it?" And Niles is like, "Exasperate, work with me, sir."
Yes.
Um,
Work with me, sir. Yes.
and basically then Niles explains that, it's the anniversary of how long Fran has been with them, and she's, upset about it. And Max was like, "What? Like, surely not. Like, I mean, who would be upset about that? It's like you've been here forever essentially, and I have no idea when you started. And you've never complained." And Niles kind of dryly is like, I keep the hurt inside, sir."
Yes.
You even forget my birthday. I suppose it's okay."
Right. I suppose that's all right too.
Yes. And then Cece, well, and Max was like, "Oh, I guess maybe then, and then Cece's like, steps in, like, "I've been your partner for 10 years and we've never celebrated a damn thing." And Niles is like, "Get it?"
Yeah.
And but anyway, then Maxwell's like, "Oh, I should get something for her." But oh no, like they need to get to the airport in order to make the flight to get to Washington. Um, and so they're kind of running out the door with their suitcase. Cece's running after him, like, I can't walk the aisle alone, down the aisle alone. And Niles is like, I say prepare for the inevitable,
Hmm.
which it can be meant in both ways, I think. But it turns out we'll see next what happened. But again, basically in the scene, Maxwell finally finds out why Fran's angry with him. And we
Right.
realize, yeah, Maxwell's not one to really take note of any type of anniversary.
Right. And even in the conversation with Niles, you know, when Niles tells him that it's her anniversary,
Mm-hmm.
Maxwell just doesn't believe him. Like, not like, as you sort of alluded to, he says, well, don't be preposterous, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he, as you commented, I mean, you've been working here forever, and I haven't the faintest idea when you start, and you don't go all half cocked, go off all half cocked. And like Niles points out that it keeps the hurt inside, and Maxwell's like, but surely Miss Fine isn't the type of person to hold it over my head. And as he's speaking, this through, he realizes, oh no, is it too late to send flowers? Which is the
Yeah.
point at which Cece was like, Maxwell, have you lost your mind? She is the
Mm-hmm.
nanny. I have been your partner for 10 years and we haven't celebrated a damn thing. I think the 10 years is wrong based on things that we will talk about later. I just wanted to drop that in. So,
Mm-hmm.
because I couldn't stop
Yeah.
myself. So, unless I'm forgetting a scene, I think the next scene is Gracie and Fran in the living room watching the award ceremony.
Yes, that's
Okay,
correct.
excellent. So Fran shouts to the kids, come on, your father's on, and he won. And then again, she's doing that thing where she speaks at normal volume and then she mumbles. And I'm not sure if she said, but his fly is open, or I hope his fly is open.
Mm-hmm.
And so Maggie and Brighton rush in, and Maggie says, doesn't Daddy look handsome? And Fran makes a non-committal sound and adds, he's no Pierce Brosnan.
Mm-hmm.
And then Niles can't help but comment on what is on the screen that we don't see quite yet. Oh my, the camera does put on 10 pounds. It just doesn't distribute it. And so eventually we then do cut to what's on the screen, and we see Maxwell and Cece is wearing the red dress. And, Maxwell says, I'd like to thank the Center for Performing Arts for this most gracious recognition. I'd like to thank my 3 wonderful children. And a very special thanks to the woman without whose help I wouldn't be here tonight, Miss Fran Fine. Happy anniversary, Miss Fine. And like Fran gets like so happy, like she like lights up. And then we learn, and Cece fainted. We learn that Cece fainted. And of course, we've cut back to the family by this point. And they all kind of look horrified. And Fran says, and that, ladies, is why you must always wear your underwear, and
Mm-hmm.
covers Brighton's eyes.
Yeah, because we actually see Cece fall over, like,
Yes.
behind Maxwell.
Yes. And clearly the angle then shifts, and
Yes.
it's not for the best.
No. Yeah. So we then cut to the kitchen, and
Mm-hmm.
Niles and Fran are at the table, and Fran's still kind of basking in the in having heard that and stuff, and Maxwell comes in. Now, here, timing wise, it appears to be like later that night, as if
Right.
he had just flown straight back home.
Yeah. It doesn't
Because
really
he
make
had,
sense.
yes, it didn't really make sense timing wise because he's still in his tux. It's just that like his bow tie's undone. Obviously like at the end of a day winding down type of thing. But yeah, like the implication seems to be it's the same night, just later.
Yeah. I mean, for the record, like that flight is like, so according to procurala.com, a nonstop flight would be between an hour and 45 minutes between DC and New York.
Oh,
And that does
really that
not,
long? Huh. I
I
kind
mean,
of would have thought it would be shorter.
so from my travel, I believe about an hour is right. But like that
Mm-hmm.
also doesn't factor in. I mean, this is before the TSA.
Yeah.
But there's still you still had to get to your gate. You still had to get from the center to the airport and from the airport home. So like,
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. The timing doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Yeah. Because especially like we saw in the previous scene, like everybody has like all the kids have pajamas on. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's clearly an evening celebration, not like during the day. So
Right.
anyway, but he walks in and oh, but Mr. Like Sheffield, that's you didn't have to, but clearly she's very pleased by it.
Right.
Um, and like Maxwell's trying to get a sandwich or something to eat, and Fran's just kind of like, oh, well, but can you tell me why nobody like ever calls for me? Because he tells her she's such a wonderful nanny. Yeah, well then why does nobody ever ask for me? Um, why does no one want to ever take me away? And Maxwell's obviously kind of not sure what to say, and he tries to kind of like give non-committal responses, like, "Oh, it's such a simple explanation, so much so that explaining it to you would be insulting."
Right.
And then he like tries to change the subject of Niles, is there any more tea? And Niles gets up and walks towards the back going saying, I'll go to China to see.
Right.
Clearly leaving Maxwell to deal with this himself. And
Yeah.
so what Maxwell finally comes to is, well, look at you, Miss Fine, because Frank kind of taps on his shoulder to make him turn back to her, and she's like, hello, and he's like, well, look at you, you're so attractive that any woman wouldn't want you in her home underneath, like under the nose of her husband or something like that.
Right.
And Fran obviously feels very good about this, kind of, puffs up and it's like, well, when you're right, you're right. And um, she leaves the kitchen. And that's when Niles kind of sidles back up to Maxwell and
Maxwell.
says, nice save, and gives him kind of like a high five. And Fran immediately comes back in and says, I heard that. And she kind of like hits Maxwell on the arm.
Right.
And it's like one of those like freeze frame where it's just like Fran hitting Maxwell who's holding a sandwich and Niles is on the other side.
And poor Maxwell just wanted to eat the sandwich. That's all he
Yes.
wanted.
Yes, he really wanted to eat that sandwich. Did you
Um,
have any to add to that scene?
yeah, so the reason Fran comes back into the room is because, as you put it, Niles says something like "nice save," and Maxwell's like, "Oh, well, I just came up with that,"
Yeah.
and that's what Fran heard.
Yep.
Um, I think that's the only clarification I wanted to make on that scene. Um, so the last scene is we see Cece has just finished putting her award back together. Like clearly after she fainted because she was the one who was holding it, it shattered, and so she put it back together and she's carefully walking it towards the living room. And Fran comes in shouting to Brighton, and Cece is so shocked she accidentally tosses slash drops it, and it shatters again. Niles is there cleaning it up. So
Yes.
poor
But
Cece.
in a very taunting way.
Yeah,
Like humming a little song, going around Cece, looking at her meaningfully, like he is clearly taunting Cece, and Cece's just kind of frozen.
yeah. I mean, I sort of feel bad for Cece right there because you're right.
Mhm.
Niles is just totally gleeful.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
is there any, are there any bigger picture points you want to talk about before we jump into our
Well,
shticks?
again, just in terms of like timeline kind of stuff, some of that does not really mesh here. And I did think it was interesting that Fran didn't make a comment of like the kids obviously have not overlooked her. Like they clearly have been trying to get her present this entire
Right.
time. But you know, but yeah. Did you have any kind of overarching thing?
I guess one thing I want to mention, in the scene where uh, Maxwell finally learns what's going on, I really don't like the trope of it must be a hormonal thing for
Yeah.
why the woman is upset. I don't
Hmm.
I don't like that um on in media. I don't like that in real life. I find that
Hmm.
to be kind of obnoxious.
Yeah.
Um,
And speaking of that, though, what I found interesting is just the other day, um, there was like this post I saw
mhm,
that I don't know, I might have shared with you or not, but basically it's like when I was a student at Cambridge, remembers an anthropology professor holding up a picture of a bone with 28 incision marks carved in it. This is considered to be man's first attempt at a calendar. She paused, said, "My question is to you, what man needs to mark 28 days? I would suggest to you that it's woman's first attempt at a calendar." And just how, like how often are women's contributions overlooked and stuff. But anyway, that's tangential. It's not
yeah, I,
exactly to your point. But yeah, no,
I'm
I agree
tempted to
with
go
you.
further on a tangent, but I will
Yeah.
resist.
Yes,
Um,
but I agree with you. That's an overused trope that, oh, must be on her period.
right, and like if I have to pick between Maxwell and Fran, I'm definitely going to side with Fran because he probably did something that deserved her being ticked off at him. Um, yeah, I just wanted to comment on that because I didn't care for that.
Mhm.
Um, I think that was the only thing that I wanted to comment on before we jump into our shticks. Would you like
Although
to
I
start?
would say, well, quickly
No, go
before
ahead.
we, I would say though that Fran obviously was very passive aggressive throughout this episode. And
Yeah.
to be fair to Maxwell, how would Maxwell know that her anniversary starting there would mean that much to her? Especially if he's obviously not one to really do that.
Mm.
So, so I mean, I think it's a bit more complicated. It's not clear cut, I would say.
No,
Obviously,
I guess that's a
trying
fair
to
point.
accomplish things, but again, I mean, do you celebrate each year when you started working? I don't know, maybe you do.
I mean, I
But
note it. Um, but I
yeah,
guess
but do you expect your employer to like comment about it or like throw you a surprise or anything like that?
I would not expect a party.
Hmm.
Um, although you guess I guess you sort of raise a different point then, which I don't think you mean to raise. But why would the kids be getting her a present or marking it as like something to celebrate? Like, where would they learn that from if not Maxwell?
Oh, well, because I thought Gracie was kind of present whenever Fran was telling
She was.
Miles about it.
She
And
was.
maybe, and it seemed obviously like Fran was dropping hints in general. And so, probably off screen at some point, she may have talked about it and the kids picked up on it. I don't
Okay.
think it's coming from Maxwell. I think it's coming from Fran.
No, I mean, I guess that's a good point because you're right. Gracie is there when Fran's saying, well, 1 year ago today, 1 year ago tomorrow, 1 year ago Friday, 1 year ago Saturday. So yeah, Gracie is there for that. Um, I guess I don't know if I was in Gracie's shoes, whether A, I would mention that to my older siblings, or B, if I would, even if I did mention it, if I would think that, oh, we should get her a present of some kind. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That, but I guess you're right. Yeah.
It's just kind of expectations. Like obviously she was disappointed with Maxwell because she was expecting something,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And that's why he's kind of clueless is because he had no idea that was an expectation. I feel like if they had been dating and it was their anniversary, or married or whatever, that obviously I think would translate more with understanding Fran's point of view. And I'm not
Hmm.
saying Fran doesn't, have right to feel disappointed because obviously it was very meaningful for her. It's just that I don't know if like I don't think it's on par with forgetting a wedding anniversary, for instance. Does that make sense?
Oh, it does. That makes sense. It, I guess maybe in Fran's book, like she became a part of the family a year ago,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and
I'm not saying from her perspective, yeah, she's very disappointed, but I feel like Maxwell's not the type who picks up on anything.
no,
Like
he
he
is fairly
flat out
oblivious.
told. He needs to be flat out told. Whereas like Fran's, again, I would not say she's subtle, but she doesn't also come out directly and say it to him
Right.
necessarily. So, yep.
No, no, you're right. Do you want to jump into favorite fashion? There was a lot to choose from in this episode, I thought.
There was a lot of fashion. Um, but again, I don't think there was any like favorite on my end. Uh, so
Did you
if
have a
you have a
least
favorite,
favorite?
I wouldn't even say least favorite necessarily. Because I mean, like for instance, she has a very bright outfit on, um, very colorful.
In the
It's like
office?
dark but colorful. I think so.
Yeah,
Um,
so it's a plaid dress with red, green, blue, yellow, like diamond shapes, I guess.
yes. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
really like that.
Yeah. I mean, she pulls it off. I could never. Like she pulls it off. I'm but you and I are very different in terms of our color choices in
That
general.
is true. I learned from the best. I learned from Fran Fine, and I have a very
Mhm.
colorful wardrobe.
Yeah. So, did you have a favorite?
Actually, I think it was that plaid dress.
Mm.
Actually, it was a toss up between that plaid dress and what she wore when they went back to the retirement community. It was a uh, yellow top under a blue blazer. I didn't care for the fuzzy, feathery sleeves at the end of the blazer, and then a blue and yellow checkered skirt.
Mhm.
Um, I like the skirt. I like the shirt. I would have liked the jacket without the fuzzy, but I
Oh
also like
yeah,
that outfit. So
yeah. It was the fuzzy thing that kind of threw me off as well. The cuffs, the fuzzy
yeah,
cuff.
they're they're weird. Um,
Mhm.
but I like the mixture of those colors. I thought her hair looked particularly nice in this episode. Um,
Mhm. Well, and I didn't mind Cece's red dress. Did you have an opinion
I
on that?
liked it.
Yeah. I mean, it was classic, I would say.
Exactly. She looked fantastic in it.
Mhm.
I don't really know why Niles made the comment that it adds 10 pounds, but it doesn't distribute it. Like,
Yeah, and he made like a very like a face
he
with
did.
it, that like kind of a disgusted.
Right.
Um, so
Which
as
seemed
you can
totally
tell, I was not
unnecessary.
pleased with that comment, but it's
No, you also probably
that
weren't
that.
pleased with his comment about waiting for the DNA results.
Mm,
Um, I like
but
I like the red dress.
yeah,
I would have. I have no need for uh, a dress of that caliber, but if I did, I would wear something like that.
yeah, I think I would too.
Um,
Jen.
I also I did not like Cece's gray suit. I didn't think
It
it
was
was very
very
flattering.
over large, like
Yeah,
oversized,
yeah,
like
but
no silhouette to it really. I don't think.
it was sort of shapeless,
Yes.
and
Yes.
it wasn't very flattering. I did like what Cece was wearing in the last scene. She's wearing like it's a black shirt, short sleeve shirt with a long black skirt and then a
Mm-hmm.
belt. It was very classic. I know I have definitely worn things that look just like that. Um, I thought that was a nice timeless outfit.
Mm-hmm.
So then I'm out when it comes to fashion.
Okay. So would you like to move on to notable New Yorkers?
Sure. We've already mentioned a number of them. Uh, Gretel from Hansel and Gretel, referenced in the first scene. Um, Also in the first scene, Ava Gabor,
Mm-hmm.
um, who was a Hungarian-American actress, socialite, singer, and businesswoman. She marketed clothing, beauty products, and, as relevant here, wigs. So that's the type of wig that Heather Biblow bought. The Eva Gabor bio is courtesy of our friends at Wikipedia. I think you mentioned the Orkin Man previously. That's a pest control company. You also mentioned Weight Watchers and Milky Way candy bars. There's a reference to going to Macy's, which I assumed would be the Macy's in Herald Square, although I have no basis for that part of the assumption. Cece referenced the movie Cocoon, which was a 1985 sci-fi comedy and drama about elderly people who were rejuvenated by aliens. So that's according to Wikipedia. You want to chime in?
No, I was just saying that's interesting.
Yeah.
In that scene too, the Chanel number 5.
Yep.
And again, neither of us could really pick up on what the other fragrance scent was.
Right.
Now, earlier too, whenever they were talking about going to I think it was Maxwell saying Bloomingdale's. Fran makes a note, diamonds are forever.
That's the catchphrase for one of the diamond companies, isn't it?
Yeah, quickly. Ugh. My computer's not complying.
Apparently Diamonds Are Forever is also the name of a 1971 action spy film.
Yeah, one of the James Bond's ones, right?
Oh, it is. I did not know that. According to our friends at Wikipedia, it's the 7th in the James Bond series produced by Eon Productions.
Yeah, it's one of the Sean Connery ones.
I really thought that was a diamond company catchphrase. Guess I'm wrong.
Well, I immediately thought of the James Bond movie, but it also sounds like a jewelry kind of thing. But that's why, yeah. Anyway,
I was right. A diamond is forever is the catchphrase for Forever Mark Diamond Jewelry, according to their webpage.
Okay.
I feel vindicated. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
Totally fine. You want to toss in some more? Otherwise, I've got a handful more.
Yeah, I mean, because we've talked about Jeopardy before.
Yep.
The Renaissance. Again, I thought it was interesting all the euphemisms they were using with when they were talking about how the grandmother passed away. She checked out, bought a farm, go to the well to kick the bucket. Like, those are just kind of more English kind of idioms, I guess. I don't know. That's probably the wrong word. But anyway.
Euphemism, I think, was the right phrase.
Yeah, I think so too. But I thought it was interesting, like with Red Robins, is that an actual group or did they just basically fictionalize the Girl Scouts?
I assumed it was actually I thought it was just a ripoff of Brownies. And yeah, I think that's right. I just Googled, and Red Robin is also the name of, as you probably know, a fast food joint. And so I'm getting a lot of results for that. So I think it's just them ripping off either the Girl Scouts, Brownies, or the Boy Scouts.
Yeah. And then there was another mention of the Menendez Boys.
Yes, there was.
Second season.
Yes, and they were on Court TV this time. There's actually an interesting article on E! About the Menendez brothers. And as we previously commented, they were brothers who were on trial for murdering their parents. And this article posits that because of the interest and popularity of following their court trial, television was better able to cover the O.J. Simpson trial a couple years later. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. Now, the Eldorado.
Eldorado is a type of car.
Yeah. Yeah. But was there, you've said I think you caught on a specific type of color.
I believe it was Bill Blass, the color scheme.
Gotcha. Let's see. Dr. Quinn,
Yes.
medicine woman. That's what
Yes.
Fran was gonna watch while she ate her lean cuisine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Mrs. Klein. So they were alluding to whether she is related to Calvin Klein.
Correct.
So the thigh burner, Ouija board.
I already mentioned Yoda
Yes, Yoda.
from Star Wars. Pierce Brosnan, who
Yes.
is an
A
Irish
different
actor.
Bond too.
Yep, known for being James Bond, according to Wikipedia. There was the Center for Performing Arts referenced a couple times. I'm curious if that's actually a reference to the Kennedy Center.
Mm.
I wasn't sure. The Kennedy Center was named after former President Kennedy, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
well before this. So that's just my hypothesizing.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you have anything else?
I think that was it.
Yeah. Okay.
I kind of
And
chimed in while you were still reading your notes.
no, that works. Okay. So moving on.
I think we're up to Yiddish Cop.
Yep.
So in the first scene, Niles makes a comment about, is this another one of your colorful holidays involving plagues? That is a reference to Passover on the 10 plagues that got the Israelite slaves freed. Fran responds, don't mock the Jewish holidays. They get you out of more school than mono. I'm not actually sure that's correct, because according to an article on kidshealth.org, the symptoms of mono will last 2 to 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure that's accurate. And also in New York, at least where when I was growing up, and I believe it is still the case now, public schools were closed for the Jewish high holidays, so everyone got off.
Oh.
Just for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and then Passover and Easter usually overlap, so there's time off for that as well. But yeah, I'm not sure if you actually would get off school for more time than a mono infection would give you. So also in that scene, there's reference to escargot, which is made of snails. I bet you can guess where I'm going with this. Snails are not kosher. We don't eat bugs. Bugs are not kosher. You mentioned in the retirement home where Fran has her 2 fingers and goes poo, poo, poo over it. Instead of trying to come up with a good explanation for that myself, I am borrowing the exact words from an article on Kveller.com. And I quote, after seeing, hearing, or learning of something absolutely awful, it's customary to spit 3 times to ward off the evil eye, end quote. So, and then there are 2 other words, I think. If I missed any, please tell me. When Fran referenced Dr. Quinn, medicine woman, she talked about whatever frontier mishigas she got up to. So mishigas is Yiddish. It means like craziness, nonsense, stupidity. And then the last one is, as Fran was leaving after telling Maxwell that he was the best boss ever, she snarkily says, eat trafe and die. Trafe is categorically not kosher food. So as we've talked about previously with kashrut, that determines what food is considered fit for consumption. So if it's kosher, it's fit. If it's not, it's trafe. Trafe is not fit for consumption. So
yeah. And then I noted too that she kind of asked for shrimp cocktail, and I was like, that's not kosher.
That is not kosher. She specifically asked for shrimp cocktail rumaki, which I did not know was a thing, but I Googled, it is actually a thing, and no, it would not be kosher because it has shrimp in it. So yes, I'm so glad you understand that shrimp is not kosher.
That is one of the things I've learned in doing this podcast with you.
See, I like to share my knowledge, and now you also know that snails are not kosher. Things that creep and crawl on the earth are not considered kosher. For land animals, they need to have split hooves and chew their cud to be kosher. birds, you eat the birds that are mentioned in the Bible. Like these rules are not very complicated, but they are violated left, right, and center on this show. So, which is disappointing. So, yeah. Would you like to take us to our 90s nostalgia?
Yeah. So again, in terms of when Brighton and Maggie are trying to figure out like a gift for Fran, and they're saying they're going to the store and stuff. I could also see them today just ordering online something.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I was gonna leave your freebie.
Thank
So
you. Old cars.
yes, I mean that the episode opens with that. Did you notice that?
And there are actually a number of different scenes with the old cars. It's not just like the scene, the picture of the front of the house, but then there's another point where we see a taxi drive by. There were a lot of old cars. More interestingly, are the pink tissues. So I wanted to come back to this because you were like, the tissues are pink. Yes, they were. So I remember as a kid there being pink and blue tissues. Do you remember that?
Yep. Yeah.
So I think they've been discontinued. I did some quick internet research before our show, and for some reason I kept getting redirected to colorful toilet paper, which is not the same thing, but it does seem that it has been discontinued. And I think it's probably related to the discontinuation of colored toilet paper. So apparently before the 80s, it was super popular to have colored toilet paper to match the colors of your bathroom. And so somewhere in the 1980s, I read this piece on apartmenttherapy.com where it talked about how in the 80s, colored toilet paper started to be discontinued. And some think that it was related to concerns in the medical communities about the dye and the colors of the toilet paper being bad for your skin and bad for the environment. That said, the apartment therapy person who wrote it hypothesized that a lot of the modern trend is for bathrooms to be white, so people aren't so keen to be matchy with their toilet paper. But apparently pink toilet paper is still a fad in Spain. And if you are interested in spending a pretty penny, you can buy specialty colored toilet paper at a premium.
That's interesting because I did study abroad for a semester in college, and I was in a European country, and I'm pretty sure I got green toilet paper at some point, like at the grocery store.
I'm not going to lie, that's awesome, assuming it isn't, carcinogenic.
Yes. Well, knock on wood, I'm okay right now.
Right.
Yeah.
You can get, apparently, if you search online, you can buy very brightly colored toilet paper. You can also buy custom specialty toilet paper. For my birthday during the first year of the pandemic, I was gifted to celebrate my birthday toilet paper with emojis and my age on my purported age on the toilet paper. So
yeah,
that's all I'll say on that front.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I was really excited to mention the pink tissues.
Interesting.
They seem to have been discontinued. Like if you try to like search to buy them, good luck. I could not find them.
Yes.
So
let us know if
yes,
you've come across the pink tissues lately.
Exactly. I mean, I did not see it. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Okay. Any other 90s nostalgia?
I'm not gonna lie. I was so focused on the pink tissues that that's really all I got. Did you have anything else?
No. So future fun.
Okay. Not sure where I want to start. I guess I will start with Cece and her comment about how she and Maxwell have been partners for 10 years. I think I'm going to rescind my snarky comment from before, because upon further reflection, it's very possible that they've only been partners for 10 years, but have been working together longer. And I say that because we later learned that Cece was, I believe, the maid of honor at Maxwell's wedding to his first wife.
Mhm.
So to his late wife, I should say. So that's point one. Point two on the, just because Gracie complains about being a jinx so often, it's a cute parallel that later on in this series, Fran is accused of being a jinx while she is dating a member of the New York Rangers, and she becomes one of the like most hated people in New York City because of it.
Aw.
So don't worry, there's a happy ending there. There, just because Fran comments on that Maxwell is no Pierce Brosnan.
Mhm.
There is a scene, I believe it's in season 3. It could be later. I think I just attribute everything to season 3 because I say it because it's my favorite.
Mhm.
But at one point, Niles provides the advice: if all else fails, what would Pierce Brosnan do? I will not say to whom he provides the advice or any of the context surrounding it, but Niles does give that advice to someone. And then my last piece of future fun, which I'm trying to phrase very carefully, so if anyone does not want spoilers, please fast forward. At the very end of the series, there is a party for a 1-year anniversary. I will not say of what.
Mhm.
So that's all I'm gonna say.
Okay.
So
Then
I
it
think
is time for episode rating, and it's your turn.
it's always my turn. It feels like it's always my turn. Crap. So I generally like this episode. I do think it's funny. I think it's witty. Um, it I liked that there were, sort of 3 different storylines going on. I think give it. I'm probably gonna give it a. Oh, I'm torn between a 3.5 and a 4. I think I'm gonna give it a 4 because
Okay.
it was funny. You know what? No, I'm gonna give it a 3.5. No, I'm gonna give it a 3.75. Sorry, guys, I clearly cannot make up my mind. I'm giving it a 3.75. I did not like as I've commented before, I did not like the joke about Fran and her hormones. I don't care for that. Yeah, I'm just gonna stick with 3.75. Now
Okay.
it's your turn. Good luck.
I'll give it a 4.
Okay.
Yeah. Generally, yeah, I enjoyed the episode. We already commented on some of the things uh about it that would knock it down from a 5, but also like I said, it was just kind of the timeline at the end is a little jarring in terms of, oh, he's already back
Hmm.
that night? How late is it?
Right.
So,
There was also the weird scene where all the little red robins were in the living room and Fran just like walks away from them, even though she's the adult responsible for them.
mhm.
Yeah, I. It's a cute concept. I think it's funny, but yeah, I'm gonna stick with my 3.75. I think.
I would say too, like, I did enjoy when Niles is trying to explain and he's so exasperated, like, work with me, sir. And like, I kept the hurt hidden or I kept the hurt inside and stuff.
There will be more of that. Don't worry.
Yes. Oh,
Um,
I'm not afraid that, Niles will ever stop his little Niles comments.
oh, he will not. He will not. Unless you have anything else.
Nope.
Okay. Well, that's all we have for you today. We hope you had a fine time with us as we revisited The Nanny. Join us next week when we'll be discussing episode 28, The Nanny Napper.
If you would like to reach us on social media, you can find us on Twitter at Nanny Revisited. You can also send us email at afinetimenannyrevisited@gmail.com. Have a great week.